Good afternoon, beloved, and welcome to our 15th podcast. This morning or this afternoon, we're going to be talking about fear and something called learned helplessness, a paradigm that I discovered when I was working on my doctoral dissertation, and one that I use to explain a lot of student behavior in the classroom. This paradigm was not meant for education, but in fact is used to explain how and why people react the way they do to situations that they feel are not positive, that they feel they have failed. So learned helplessness is a reaction to failure. And we're going to talk about this in terms of fear. So before I get started though, what I wanted to do was I wanted to go back and review just a little bit the past few weeks and remind you that all of these discussions began when we started talking about resilience and why resilience was so important, especially during this pandemic. Right now, during this time of darkness and fear and anxiety and all of the things that are going on around us, it's important that we learn how to be resilient. And so the whole purpose of these podcasts, these last three, is to try to help you understand not only what resilience is, but how you can increase your resilience. If you'll remember, I said, that resilience is a measure of how, let me back that up. Resilience is a measure of your ability to adapt to a new reality, to change. Change is happening all the time around us. Heaven knows we're right now in the middle of the greatest pandemic the world has ever known, and there's been this huge amount of change. People have had to adapt to the way they live, the way they go to the grocery store, the way they interact with one another. Everything has changed, and it's a difficult time. And I know that. I know everybody knows that it's a difficult time. So we need to find ways that will help us to adapt and to make peace with these changes that are going on around us. People are always saying, well, when is it going to get back to normal? Truth of the matter is, there probably won't be a normal. There'll be a new normal. Hopefully, this new normal will be much better than the old one. But, beloved, I don't see us going back to the old normal. It's just not going to happen. So we need to adapt. We need to change. We need to find the good that's going on all around us. We need to see the positive in this. And in doing so, move forward in a very positive, enthusiastic manner. So, if you remember, we started off talking about resilience. We talked about what is resilience, and then we talked about, excuse me, and then we talked about stress and how people who are unable to adapt tend to have a lot of stress in their lives. And then last week, we talked about worry and anxiety. And worry and anxiety are a manifestation of stress. The stress comes first usually, and then we ponder it and we ruminate about it and from that pondering and from that we get emotionally involved, and in that emotional involvement, this is what we call worry and anxiety. And we talked about some methods of overcoming that worry and anxiety last week, and we talked about why that was so important. We talked a bit, and we'll talk a little bit more tonight, about the biopsychosocial model of medicine that Dr. Engel developed, and how there's this mind body connection. how everything begins in your mind. Good, evil, positive, negative, uh, winning, failing, all of these things, all of these concepts begin in your mind. And then they manifest themselves out throughout your physical body. So that when you're under a great deal of emotional stress, that a lot of that emotional stress comes from your mind. And yet it plays out, it manifests itself out in the human body. And you start feeling sick, you start feeling run down, headachy, achy. I mean, we all know what it is, guys. Uh, the headache, the one that starts right back here in the back of your skull, and it feels like it's coming right up over the top of your head. And when it gets up here to the front, it's going to blow your eyeballs out. You know that one, that stress headache that we all love so much. Isn't that fun? Ooh, that feels so good. Yeah. Well, if you don't like it, then let's find a better way. Let's find out why we're feeling the way we are. Because if you find yourself under a great deal of stress and you go to a doctor, well, they're going to give you a pill. Uh, Plain and simple. We are a society of symptomologists. Everybody, we have pills for every symptom there is. You have a headache, you take a pill. You have a stomach ache, you take a little purple pill with yellow rings on it. Anything that you can feel, we have a pill for it. The problem is that the pills wear off. And when the pill wears off, the symptom comes back. Why? Because we haven't dealt with the problem. We've dealt with the symptom, but we haven't dealt with the problem. So my purpose in doing these presentations for you today, for the past several weeks, is so that you can begin to understand the problem. And in doing so, you can find your own way of dealing with the problem. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of tenacity, because a lot of these problems run very deep. They are a very much a part of who and what we are. They go to the very core of our being. That's okay. We can do this. We can find a way to overcome this new reality, adapt, and make it something far better than it ever was before. So that's the goal of these last podcasts. And we're just going to continue on with this idea in today's, where we're looking at fear. And we need to ask ourselves, what is fear? Now, I want you to be proud of me because I actually made a graphic for this. And I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but this is my graphic. What is fear? So here it is. We're going to talk about fear. Where does fear come from? And why is fear so debilitating? And I have these conversations with students all the time. Most of you know that for 22 years I taught eighth graders mathematics, and I've seen all kinds of fear. I've seen fear in just about every possible um, how it plays out in every possible way. But there was always the problem with fear is that it always led to someone retarding their own progress. Do you understand that? Let me make that a little bit clearer. I would in my classroom, I used to take great pleasure in my math lessons. And to me, they were just absolute works of art because they made perfect sense. And I would put these math lessons up all over the board, all over the board. When you walk in my classroom, the math lesson was right up there, and it was gorgeous. It was perfect. And I understood it, and it made perfect sense to me, and I was prepared to explain the lesson as many ways as I had to so that the students would understand. And invariably, the bell would ring, and all these 13-year-old um, mental midgets, God bless them, teenagers are basically brain dead. We all know that. And they would walk into the classroom and they'd take one look at that blackboard and they go, oh no, nope, nope, can't do it. Can't do it. And I'd say, wait a minute, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean you can't do it? I haven't taught it yet. You'll get it. You'll understand it. Nope, nope, can't do it. Absolutely can't do it. And unfortunately, for a goodly number of those young people, they would actually sabotage their own success so that it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. They failed. And why did they fail? Because they said they were going to. They said they couldn't understand it. They said, no way, forget it. I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to understand this. And they would sabotage themselves in a lot of cases. And that bothered me. That bothered me a lot. And I wanted to know why. I wanted to know why these young people who had perfectly good brains. I mean, there was absolutely no reason, as far as I was concerned, as to why they couldn't understand. I understood. I'm a pretty good teacher. I would present the lesson in as many ways as I possibly could. But they just couldn't get it. And of course, I know that's none of you. I get that. I'm sure that all of you in school were great math students and you understood math perfectly and you had no problems whatsoever. But that's not true. And I notice even today when I travel around the country and I give presentations to teachers, I have this handout that I use. And it's a great handout because I want to make a point. And the handout is basically two cars approaching each other at different rates of speeds, and a bird flies back and forth between the two cars. And the question is, when the two cars meet, how far will the bird have flown? People open the packet or they turn the handout over, and right away you can see it. It's like everybody in the room all of a sudden is transformed back to the fifth grade. And you can hear them groaning and you can hear them, oh, I can't do this. Oh, this is math. Forget it. I can't do it. No, not even going to try. No, can't do it. And then when I point out to them that the handout is not a math handout, in fact, I got it from a reading book, a reading workbook. And if you read it very carefully, it will tell you the answer. Then they all laugh and they giggle and they say, oh yeah, well yeah. But the point is that this fear, this anxiety goes back generations, goes back decades. Do you understand? These are grown people, these are teachers, these are adults who teach other people, and here they are experiencing the same fear and the same anxiety that they felt way back in the fifth grade. And the question is why? Why does that happen? And I believe I have an answer. And I believe that by sharing that answer with you, hopefully it will help you to become a little bit more resilient in this time of adaptation. So, what is fear? Well, there is an acronym for fear, and the acronym is false evidence appearing real. Fear. False evidence appearing real. And that isn't true. False evidence appearing real. Albert Einstein once wrote, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Stop and think about that just for a minute. These young people, these adults, these teachers who have this paranoia, this fear about mathematics, that's a mindset. That's a certain way of thinking, a way of looking at mathematics. And because of that, they're acting upon false evidence that appears real. What's the false evidence? The false evidence is I can't do this. I can't do math. Whatever it is, I can't do it. And some of you can relate to that, please. Don't lie to me. I know that some of you really can definitely relate to this idea of it's just too hard. I can't do it. And maybe it's not math. Maybe it was another subject in school. Maybe it was chemistry. Maybe it was English. Maybe it was history, social studies. I don't know what it was. But we've all encountered events in our lives where we came away thinking, forget it. I can't do it. This is not going to happen. And because of that, we have geared our whole life away from that event. And if that event were important for our success, then we can actually go so far as to give up our success just so that we don't have to repeat that event because heaven knows it's too hard and I can't do it. You see, we cannot solve that problem using the same thinking that we used when we created the problem. So we have to change our thinking. And I want you to remember this quote because we're going to come back to it later on in the podcast. So, fear. Why is fear so devastating? Why does it harm us so much? Where does it come from? One of the things you're going to discover is that most fears are not rational. Now, that's kind of hard to buy, but it's true. Most fears are not rational. They come from someplace else. Now, if you have a fear of going out and playing kickball in the road because you might get hurt, well, that's a rational fear. Let's face it. I mean, you don't want to do that. You don't want to go and play kickball in the road. But most fears are irrational. Most fears come from our childhood. Many, 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 many years ago, I mean, like 1985 to 95, somewhere in that time period, I worked with a psychotherapist. His name was Vince Hurlovich. Vince was a brilliant psychotherapist, and he was a good guy, and I was counseling married people, working with marriage problems. And Vince had his own practice going. And I'll never forget this. One night, I lived in Fort Lauderdale, and one night, Vince came over to my house, and he was panicked. He was sweating, and he's wringing his hands, and he's all upset, and he's all worried. And I said, Vince, what's bothering you? And he said, well, I just bought a townhouse. Now, back in those days, Vince was knocking down about $350,000 a year. So I couldn't imagine why in the world he was upset. And I said, wow, Vince, this has got to be some townhouse, man. Are you afraid that you're not going to be able to afford it? And he said, no, it's not that. I don't know what it is. So I said, okay, come on in. Now, in psychotherapy, we begin by regressing the person back to their childhood. In other words, in your mind, you go back to your childhood and we try to find the where the problem began, the basis for the problem. And so Vince, being a trained psychotherapist, it was easy to regress him. And we very quickly realized that when Vince was real little, every time he would pick up a tool or something like that, his father would come along and grab it away from him and say, no, you can't do that. And he heard him. I mean, the child heard, I can't do that. And so now I have a 53-year-old, highly intelligent, highly educated psychotherapist who can't change a light bulb. Now you might think that would have answered the problem. That you might think that that would have been the end of the situation, but in reality it wasn't. Because you see, now the social aspect of this problem filters in, and everybody knows that a man, quote unquote, is good with tools. Men are good with tools. Vince is not good with tools. Therefore, he's afraid that his wife will think that he's not much of a man. Now, ladies, that might not seem very rational to you. For the guys watching this, they'll go, oh yeah, okay, I understand that. But the point of it is, this was a real fear for him. And if he had not had the tenacity and the ability to confront the fear, he would have been a victim of his own emotions for the rest of his life. In fact, you'll find that all of us are victims of our own emotions. We're victims of our own fears. It's wonderful. Les Brown has this quote that I use all the time, and I absolutely love it. Les said, too many of us are not living our dreams because we are living our fears. Too many of us are not living our dreams because we're living our fears. That's absolutely right. If we don't have the courage, if we don't have the tenacity to face the fear and to recognize how irrational it is, then we allow ourselves to be victims of our own emotions. And so this can go on for years and years and years and years, maybe a whole lifetime. My dad always wanted to be a chemist. In fact, my father, right after World War II, came back from serving, and he became part of a team at the University of Virginia, and they developed plasma. My father was part of that team. He always wanted to be a chemist, but he was afraid he couldn't get past the German that was necessary to take as one of the courses. And so he left and became a banker. And to the day he died, that man said, I wish I had become a chemist. This happens. We, too often, we are not living our dreams because instead we're living our fears. We allow fear to control us. We allow fear to take over our lives. And instead of being tenacious and addressing it, and it's almost like it's like if you could close your eyes and you could take your fear and pull it right up out of your head and then kind of hold it in your hand and turn it around and look at it and examine it. You know what would happen? The fear would go poof. It would go away. Why? Because most fears are irrational. If my father had tried to take German, had taken the class several times, and had failed it multiple times, and then tried every way he possibly could to get around the German requirement. And if he had done everything he could possibly do before leaving and becoming a banker, maybe things would have turned out differently for him. But he never did. He never confronted his fear. He just assumed that he could never, ever, ever pass the German requirement. And so he left chemistry, went to the College of Business, and became a banker. So the point is that we can't allow that to happen to us. And again, getting back to Dr. Engel's work with the biopsychosocial model of medicine, we realize that fear also has this negative impact upon the human body. The anxiety, the worry, all of the things that come from fear and stress. There's a very, very interesting paradigm in psychology right now. A lot of times in psychology, we talk about what motivates people. And one of the latest paradigms in psychology talks about the fact that there are only two things that motivate people: fear and love. Fear and love. Fear is the absence of love. If you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. If you don't respect yourself, you can't respect other people. If you can't appreciate yourself, you can't appreciate other people. It's just that easy. And without that ability, without that love, without that appreciation, without that respect, what's left is fear. You're afraid of people. You're afraid of new situations. You're afraid of subjects. You're afraid of this and that and everything. I've talked to students, I've talked to clients who are literally fearful of everything. They're just afraid. They worry all the time. Say, what are you worrying about today? I don't know. I'm just worrying. There's so much to worry about. And in our society, we're a very fear-driven society. And if you doubt that, all you got to do is turn on the TV for more than 10 minutes. I mean, you might have wakened up this morning being in a wonderful mood and you go, yes, I feel so good. Yeah, all right. And you turn on the TV 10 minutes max. And I guarantee they're going to tell you something that's going to make you fearful. We're a very fear-driven society. These 24-hour news cycles, they got to report something. If it's not a pandemic, then it's a riot. If it's not a riot, then it's something going on in Washington. Some congressman, this one's doing this one's doing that, or this person's doing, and it goes on and on and on and on. So then you turn to local news and you find out this guy got shot, or this one got robbed, or this one got killed, or this one got run over, and it's constant. It's constant. This playing on our fear. Fear sells. It does. You've all heard them say in the news business, if it bleeds, it reads. So people are looking for things to be fearful. Fear on steroids is called learned helplessness. And let me explain why. Because the title is very appropriate, learned helplessness. You don't come into the world with it. This is not innate. This is not something that comes from God. This is something that we develop. When you were born into the world basically undesignated. You were a clean slate. Now, your mother was a somebody and your dad was a somebody, so you automatically went into somebody training, and you were being taught how to be a somebody. All right. So from that, we get what we call parent tapes. And going right back to the idea of Vince Hurlovich, and when he was real little, his daddy took the tool away from him and said, "You can't do that." Why did his father do that? Well, the father was probably afraid that Vince would hurt himself. What did Vince hear? Vince heard, "You're not capable of, of operating this tool." So what happens? Vince grows up thinking that he's incompetent, and the father, his fear never gets recognized because Vince never gets close to a tool again, and oh well, here we go. You see? So, in other words, Vince's father taught him how to be fearful, especially when it came to tools. And we do this all the time. I mean, the other day, we were in the park walking around, and this child was climbing a tree. And the mother looks up and she sees her child up in the tree, and she doesn't say, "Go to the top, see if you can touch the sun." No. What does she do? She yells at him, "Are you crazy? Get out of that tree. You're going to fall and break your head." Oh, there's a nice vision for you, isn't it? Wow, you're going to fall and break your head. Okay. What is that parent doing? The parent is protecting the child, but at the same time, the parent is instilling the child with fear. So the child will grow up thinking that he or she absolutely cannot climb trees. Now, climbing trees is not important to success, but what if it was? What if that child grows up and enters a profession where tree climbing is important? Ah, now we have an issue. Learned helplessness. A lot of times we learn our fears and our anxieties from our parents, from things that they said to us. Maybe you had a parent that said, "Well, why can't you be as pretty as she is? Or why can't you be as smart as he is?" And what is the parent really saying to you? You're incompetent, you're nobody, you don't get it, you're kind of dense. I've told you before that on the day I received my doctorate degree, I was standing outside the auditorium at Florida Atlantic University, and I'm standing there in my doctoral robe, and I'm about to enter the auditorium that's maybe 7 or 8 thousand people, and there are only three of us receiving doctorate degrees. There's about 1,000 people getting bachelor's degrees, but there's only three of us getting doctorate degrees. And I'm standing there about to go in, and my mother is standing right here next to me. And my mother looks at me very intently, and she said, "I really didn't think you were that smart." And I went, "Yeah, okay. Thanks, Mom." You see, a lot of times who and what we are, or who and what we think we are, is based upon perceptions of our parents and people that we knew and people we grew up with, things that people said to us, things that the way people treated us. When I was in the third grade, I weighed 132 pounds. I was this tall and this wide. I kind of looked like a square. And remember back then, everybody had crew cuts. So I had a crew cut. And because I'm dyslexic, I don't read very well. And so I couldn't read all that well. And people would come along and pat me on top of my widow head and say, "Well, he's a nice boy." And I understood what that meant. They didn't have to tell me. Dumb as a brick, but he's a nice boy. And obviously, even my mother believes that, because here I am standing outside the auditorium waiting to get my doctorate degree. And my own mother looks at me and says, "I really didn't think you were that smart." The point of it is that we are not only victims of our own emotions, but we are the product of all the things that we've experienced, all the things that we've heard, how we interpreted messages all the time we were growing up. And sometimes those interpretations were not accurate, but it doesn't matter. We are living, breathing accumulations of experiences. And to a greater degree, that rules a lot of what we do. But there's a way around that. It's not all dark, it's not all negative. First, we have to realize what we're doing. We have to find the tenacity to question our own belief systems. We have to be able to say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. I'm not sure about that. And we have to be able to not only face but question our own fears. Getting right back to what Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. In other words, if we're going to overcome our fears, we've got to change our mindset. We've got to change the way we think. We've got to change the way we see ourselves in relationship to the rest of the world, i.e., we have to learn how to love ourselves. We have to learn how to respect ourselves and appreciate ourselves, realizing that there are billions and billions of people in this world, but there's only one you. You are unique. You are special. And God does not create junk. You are valuable. You are wonderful. You are perfect in the way you were created. Have faith in yourself. Believe in you. Believe in God. Believe in our Lord Jesus Christ. And believe that you were sent here not only to serve them, but to do it in a way that exhibits or exudes love. We're here to love one another. We are here to love each other and to help and to support and to mentor. But before you can do that, you have to do it for yourself. You have to learn how to love you. We can get rid of so many fears, so many anxieties, so many problems just by learning how to love you. And so, one of the things I'd like for you to think about, and I tell students this all the time, if you're having a hard time, if you're one of those people, and you know who I'm talking to, you know who I'm talking to. If you're one of those people that get up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, ugh, ugh, God, and you really mean it, and you do it every day. It's not just once in a while, because once in a while, yeah, you're going to go, ugh, but you really mean it, then something has to change for you. And my recommendation is you look in the mirror and you find something you like. I don't know, maybe it's your eyebrows, maybe it's your ears, maybe it's your nose. I don't know what it is, but you find something that you like and you focus on that one thing. And you do it day after day after day, month after month, because sometimes it takes a while. But you focus on that one thing, and all of a sudden you realize, well, there's something else I like too. And there's something else. And yeah, I don't like getting older, but I really like my eyes. I like my eyes. And I like my eyebrows. And my ears aren't too bad. So you start focusing on them. And all of a sudden you start realizing that the things are changing for you. I very, very strongly believe in affirmations, positive affirmations, because remember, your physical body is connected to your mind, and you can feed into your mind whatever you want to. The liberal press, the networks, they want to feed fear and anxiety into your mind so that they can sell airtime. Your job is to feed something else into your mind. Your job is to feed positive thoughts into your mind. Those we call affirmations. I remember one time when I first started giving presentations, and I'll never forget this. I used to do this routine. It was really kind of cool, where remember, I was giving presentations to teachers, and I started off doing it with a lot of public schools. And you go in to give a presentation, and you could always tell the PE teachers. You know that. You can always tell a PE teacher because they get the spandex on and everything's tight and it's all muscular and everything. So I would get this PE teacher to come down front, and he'd be all muscular and built and everything, and I'd say, okay, before I do this, I need another volunteer. And I would find some like first grade teacher type, very small, petite little woman, and I'd have her come up. And then I'd say to the guy, okay, put your arms out. And he'd put his arms out like this. And I'd say to the lady, go ahead and pull his arms down. And she'd jump up and grab hold of his arms and just swing, And he'd stand up there going, ha, 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 ha. And then I'd say, okay, put your arms down. And I say, close your eyes and say to yourself 10 times, I am weak and unacceptable. 10 times, I am weak and unacceptable. And he would do it. And then I'd say, okay, put your arms out again. And he'd put his arms out again. And every time she could pull his arm down. He could not hold against her because he had fed that weak and unacceptable mindset, that idea into his brain, and his body was reacting to it. He was weak. He couldn't hold her. So then I'd tell him, okay, close your eyes, shake it off, close your eyes, and say to yourself 10 times, I am strong and I am confident. 10 times. I am strong and I am confident. And then I'd say, okay, put your arms out. And the lady would jump up and grab hold of his arms, and she would swing once again. It's a very powerful presentation. It works every time. And I loved it. And people all went, yay, he's so smart, yay, how wonderful, yay. Until one time, I came across a guy that didn't really like himself. So I got him into a weakened state, and then I couldn't get him back. And it took a long time to get him back into a strength state. And I never used that demonstration again, simply because it worked too well. We can see that there is a direct relationship between the mind and the body. Fear, anxiety, worry, stress, they tear the body to pieces. Physically, it tears you down. And God never designed you to be that way. God wanted you to trust in Him. Let go and let God. Take your fears and get rid of them. Learn to love yourself. Learn to respect yourself. Learn to appreciate yourself. Love is the greatest force in the universe. Love can overcome anything. You can learn a different mindset by learning how to love yourself, by using affirmations. When you get up in the morning, I am strong and I am confident. Today is going to be a wonderful day. I just know it is. Fake it until you make it. It's a great saying. Fake it until you make it. If you don't feel positive, act like you feel positive. You can actually program yourself to be more positive, to be more upbeat. Successful people understand that. You have to learn how to be positive and to keep a very positive, strong mindset. And your physical body will react. Your physical body will move right on into that mindset. I found a passage in 1 John. 1 John chapter 4, beginning with the 17th verse. And I want to share this with you because I believe that this is exactly what I've been trying to tell you, that love is the greatest cure. This is not an abstract thought. You have to learn how to love yourself. You have to learn how to accept yourself before you can love other people. And you have to learn how to love others. Next week, I'm going to be talking about the greatest lie in Christianity. And a lot of what we're saying today applies to next week's lesson. So hopefully something I said today made sense to you. Something kind of clicked off for you and you said, okay, I get that. But getting back to this Bible verse, this is from 1 John chapter 4, and it reads, God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. This is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we live in the belief and love of Jesus Christ. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. We love because he loved us first. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And he has given us this command, to love one another as I have loved you. The great command by Jesus Christ, to love one another as I have loved you. Fear, anxiety, worry, all of these things come from a lack of love, a lack of trusting, a lack of letting go and letting God. And all of these things together create a mindset that we call learned helplessness, and it acerbates everything you do. It colors your perception of the whole world, and it changes your ability to be the success you were always meant to be. So tell me, beloved, what are you afraid of? What are you fearful of? What is it that you have not ever tried because you just knew you wouldn't be successful? Is today the day? Is today the day that you decide to trust God, to know that you are perfect in every way possible, and to know that love, a love of God, a love of our Lord Jesus Christ, a love of yourself, and a love of other people is the answer, the greatest affirmation of all. I will love. I will be an instrument of love. I will love other people. I will help. I will mentor. I will nurture. But it begins with me. I have to learn how to love me. For all of my bad points and good points, all of the stuff that's ugly, all the stuff I know about myself, it's okay. All of that's okay. Doesn't matter what experiences you've had in your life. You can get past it. You can learn to love yourself. And in learning how to love yourself, you can love others. At our church, we've worked really, really, really hard at creating an environment where we love one another. Because I believe That's what God wants us to do. That's how we bring people to Christ. You have to model it. You can't tell them. You've got to walk the talk. You've got to model what it means to love one another and to support one another and nurture one another and do all kinds of things for one another, because that's how we serve God. This is an important lesson, one that I hope you're listening to and that you understand, because we all have areas of our lives where we're helpless, that we don't even try things because we're so fearful of failing. And punishment. Yeah, see, because fear is attached to punishment. If I fail, I'm going to be punished somehow. I don't know how, but it's going to be terrible, so I don't even want to go there. I love that quote by Les Brown. So many of us are not living our dreams because we're busy living our fears. Beloved, I pray that God will bless you, that He will fill your heart with His presence, that He will let you know that there is no reason for you to fear, that He is here with us always, that He is a constant, loving factor in your life. And all you have to do is get in touch with that love. Find a quiet moment and just open your heart and your mind to His presence in your heart. And know that that perfect love is there for you all the time, constantly. Anytime you need it, anytime you want it, it's there. I love you. I want you to have a fantastic week. And now, may the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, keep our hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of His Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. And may the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be and abide with you now and forevermore. Beloved, be happy. Love yourself. Hug yourself. Go hug somebody else. Make somebody else happy. It works. We're all connected. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you right back here next week, same time, same channel, for the greatest lie in Christianity. Goodbye, beloved.